Hi, I am Lynda Downing, and this is my Module 1 for EDL 856, Various Forms of Communication and Personal Video. So a little personal information about myself. My name is Lynda Marquette Downing, however my nickname is Marnie. It's a birth-given nickname, so that's what I go by. I was born and raised in Garden City, Kansas. I attended the University of South Dakota, where I got a BS in elementary education and special education. I did attend the University of South Dakota on a swimming scholarship. My hobbies are crochet, reading, searching antique shops, and vintage stores, and traveling. So my career so far, this is my 25th year as an educator. My first year, I was in Dodge City, Kansas at Northwest Elementary, where I was a special educator for kindergarten through third grade. Then I moved to Lake, Kansas, where I was a special educator for 5th through 6th grade for 3 years. Then I moved to Grinnell, Kansas, and was the special educator there for kindergarten through 12th grade for 1 year. Then I moved to Wichita, Kansas, where I was the 4th grade teacher for 1 year. Then finally, after many years of moving, I landed in Kansas City, Kansas, where I was a special educator at ACMS for 7th grade for 11 years. And then I moved back to Western Kansas to be close to my family, and now I live and work in Buckland, Kansas. I'm the special educator here for 5th through 8th grade, and this is my 8th year. So my career goal is to be a special education administrator at an interlocal special education cooperative or at a larger school district. So I thought this would be a good transition and a great quote from one of our authors that we were reading about. The introductions matter. They set a tone, they establish trust, they signal a power or its absence. They signal approachability, they reveal a respect, and the origin of that word is telling. To look at, to regard, to consider. We need to see the person with whom we are newly engaging. So I have multiple forms of communication as a special educator, which is very different than if you're a general educator, and that is due to the confidentiality. Obviously, you know, or hope you know, that special education students have a right to confidentiality about their services and how those services are provided. So that often limits my forms of communication to solely the student themselves and to their parents or guardians. So I have listed my choice of preference in order. So I have first is oral, second digital, and third is written. So go back to oral. So I really prefer phone calls. I find that that's much more personal when I'm setting up IEP meetings than necessarily just sending out paperwork and hoping that parents understand what it's for. So obviously I have phone calls. I have IEP meetings that obviously are required for every student once a year. Sometimes we have them more than 1 year, more than one IEP meeting in a year, depending on the student. Obviously, there's team meetings that involve those parents as well. And then we also have parent-teacher conferences. So digitally, I do text parents. Some parents, not all parents, some parents don't really appreciate that. And sometimes when you text about something very specific, that can kind of get lost in translation. So I am much more likely to pick up my phone and call a parent than I am necessarily to text them. I will text them to remind them of any meetings that might be coming up, because over the years it has been my experience that you can set an IEP meeting with a parent, but they need a reminder that they need to come in maybe the following day to actually attend that meeting. Obviously, that is something that I provide for myself. I have my own cell phone that I pay for, obviously. Email, obviously, that's provided through the school district. I do use email once again, to communicate with some parents if that's their preference. I do not feel terribly comfortable emailing IEP documents to parents. Some special ed teachers do that. I don't do that very often. Of course, I had to do that during COVID. We all did during lockdown. But I prefer not to use email. It's very hard to make sure that it's really secure and that a child's confidentiality isn't being broken. Written, of course, I have notice of meetings that have to go out for parents for the particular meeting. Paperwork, the IEPs themselves. Obviously, WebKids is the system that we use with the co-op that I work for, which is Southwest Kansas Area Cooperative, and obviously that's provided by that particular cooperative. I also use behavior charts. I choose to call them choices charts, since those go home to parents also as a written form of communication. I didn't include this, but at times I have used agendas. We haven't done that very much in the past. A couple of years, we found that our students just don't necessarily take them home. I didn't put on here what I'm unable to use. I don't use any form of social media to communicate with my parents. I'm very uncomfortable with that because I believe that that should be completely separate. So I don't have any Facebook page that's attached to my work at all. And I rarely, if ever, I don't think I ever have friended a parent of my students. I think that that's really not the best practice and really is not a good idea, nor do I friend any of my students or my former students, no matter how old they are. I not comfortable doing that. So because of each of the kids' confidentiality that each of them have that are on my caseload, I don't use social media. As far as using Twitter or Instagram or Facebook to actually use that as any form of communication with parents or students alike. I would have to have a Facebook page for each child. That would be weird. So I don't use that. So my professional introductions, the takeaways that I got from the reading, I wanted to point out one, people are compelled by your story and not your facts. I thought that was very interesting. Often we just have a relay of facts. We don't necessarily tell us why we chose to go into the profession that we chose to go into. With lightning speed, we react to someone who we are introduced to. We get messages of trust, openness, interest, respect, and warmth, or the opposite. When you get your introduction right, the opportunity is not only to genuinely connect with people, but you'll also be allowed to do the work you really want to do. And lastly, you are much more. You are what you believe in, your unique experiences, your struggles. You are your story. And that story is your value. Your one-of-a-kind contribution to the world around you. So, my methods of introduction, obviously, I do a lot of introductions, especially when I have new parents. I do introduce myself as Marnie Downing. I don't introduce myself as Miss Downing, and nor do I think I should require them to call me that. I don't call them by their last names. We're not that formal in the school that I'm currently in, nor have I ever been like that. So I think it's very important to tell my story, both orally written and in digital format, especially if you're new to your position. Obviously, you need to have a written statement for the media outlets and for the newspaper. Also, you would include that introduction on any social media platforms that your school uses, and obviously the school website. I did want to include that you need to be personal. You need to be careful to introduce yourself in such a way that you do not alienate your audience. And I hadn't really ever thought about that before, but I tried very hard as a special educator to create a personal relationship with my parents. It's really intimidating to have a child on an IEP and to walk into a room of strangers and feel comfortable with that. So I hope that comes across to my parents that I work with. So the Buckland School District policies for effective education, we do have policy and guidelines for social media, media relations, which covers broadcasting, taping, news releases, and interviews, handling complaints for the school website and for newsletters. Once again, those are things that I don't use at all. And the reason I don't use that is, once again, the confidentiality of my students. So I'm not going to necessarily make a large post about a project that we're doing in my classroom on a social media platform. I don't think that that's I'm just not comfortable with that. Maybe other special educators do. I don't. Maybe I'm old school. I just am not very comfortable with that. But if I did, I would, of course, use the guidelines that are provided. So my takeaway to the whole presentation is that a self-introduction is any form of interaction that tells who you are, what you do, and what others need to know. So in conclusion, my standard correlation is the module allowed me to demonstrate and communicate through oral, written, and digital means about myself and the importance of self-introduction. I was able to apply what I have learned in the articles and create an introductory slideshow about myself. Relevant. The module was extremely relevant to me in my future career as an administrator. I had never given much thought to effectively introducing myself in such a way that fully communicated who I am. The information from the articles was very informative and helpful. Being able to effectively communicate with parents will be an integral part of my job as a special education administrator. And lastly, as a reflection, as a future special education administrator, it is imperative that I have the ability to communicate with all staff and parents to ensure all students with disabilities have the services they require to be successful. I will work diligently to be able to advocate for all staff members and students. So I went ahead and included the references because obviously I did use those in my presentation today. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to looking at your videos and getting to know you better.